The 9/11 Truth movement is not only alive and well, it's growing, and it's on its way to victory.
Yeah.
Be in contact with me. It's got my phone number on it, rings in my house. It's got the website, Bowman2006.com. Get involved in my campaign however you can, and get your friends involved as well. I alluded briefly this morning to the old story. Mo and Joe walking down the street. Mo says, "I've been told the main problems in America are ignorance and apathy. Do you agree with that?" And Joe says, "I don't know and I don't care." Well, we do have a problem with ignorance and apathy, and the question is, how do we get rid of it? Let me give you a couple of true stories. Yesterday, at the Melbourne, Florida airport, waiting for my flight here, I was sitting near a woman and her husband and kids and whatnot. They'd just gotten back from a Disney cruise to Central America and the Bahamas. I gave her my card, big fancy one. And she started reading my issues. And then she says, "Well, I believe President Bush did the right thing going into Afghanistan and Iraq. He had to do something after 9/11. God, I love a good straight man. So I say, "Sure, but Afghanistan and Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein were bitter enemies because Saddam had a secular state, not an Islamic one." You know, when I taught at the War College, the official U.S. government textbook for the region praised Saddam Hussein as the most enlightened leader in the Middle East. He had done so much for his people in terms of education and health care and religious freedom and rights for women. It was all true. Yeah, he was a dictator, but he was our dictator. Until we needed a new enemy after the Soviet Union disappeared, a new excuse for our huge defense budget. If we really believed, I told her, that there were 19 Arab hijackers, why didn't we attack Saudi Arabia?
Right.
And if our government had evidence against Osama bin Laden, we should have indicted him and brought him to trial. The Taliban offered us Osama bin Laden if we would give him a fair trial. The truth is, there's a lot more evidence against people in our government than there is for Osama bin Laden. Then I started talking about 9/11 truth. And she said, "Well, you've certainly given me a lot to think about." And then about 45 minutes later, we were on the plane, and she walked back about 10 rows from where she was seated to talk to me. And she said, "Thank you for what you're doing. I hope you get elected to Congress. We need you." Truth 1, ignorance and apathy 0. Then the guy next to me says, "You're running for office?" So I give him a card. Turns out he's from a tiny village in Alaska, hundreds of miles from the nearest road. The only way you can get there is by flying in and out. And he runs a air taxi service taking tourists to isolated spots to hunt grizzly bears and moose. On 9/11, one of his pilots was flying to pick up a hunter and bring him out of the wild when all non-military aircraft were supposed to land. Before he knew it, 2 F-16s were alongside, ordering him to land. There was nothing but mountains and pine trees, and he couldn't even land that Super Cub if he wanted to. The F-16 zoomed up into the air, and he thought, well, they're gone at last. Next thing you know, whoosh! They're coming straight at him, and one goes on either side of him, just scare the pants off of him. Well, after hearing that little story, I turned to my seatmate and I said, "Isn't it funny that they could find and intercept a tiny single-engine Super Cub in the middle of nowhere flying below radar, yet couldn't intercept 4 airliners flying around the northeast of the world?" Like I said, I'm an old interceptor pilot. I know the drill. I know what you can do. I know how long it takes. And I knew that if those pilots had been alerted on time, they had gotten there. They had gotten there 20 minutes before whatever hit those towers got there. And they had been there 30 minutes before whatever hit the Pentagon got to it. They were not scrambled in time. There was an inordinate delay. Now we know at least part of that was due to all of these exercises simulating exactly the same thing happening that morning. We know at least part of it was due to the fact that most of the interceptors that normally protect the Northeast Corridor were out over northern Canada or out over the Atlantic chasing ghost aircraft on radar, false blips. And those exercises directed by Dick Cheney. If our government had done nothing on 9/11 and just let normal procedures happen, the Twin Towers would still be standing and thousands of dead Americans would still be alive. This is not incompetence. It is treason. And you know what? He agreed. Truth 2. Ignorance and apathy 0. And all this in about 2 hours.